Hey, my lovies, and welcome to a new episode. This one is concerning the disappearance of the Boyds and McCord. Sarah was last seen with her daughter Kimberly and her friend Linda McCord. The three of them attended a gospel concert in Waltersboro, South Carolina on the evening of April 3rd, 1987. They were driving through Dorchester County, South Carolina, en route to their residences in Orangeburg County when they disappeared. The trio were last seen at the event between 10:30 and 11 p.m. At the time of their disappearances, a witness recalled seeing their blue Lincoln, which belonged to Linda's husband, driving between 30 and 40 miles per hour along Route 15. That vehicle was driving behind it, but they were unable to describe it or its occupants. However, behind them was another vehicle driving along at the same speed, and they were unable to describe them or their occupants as well. No one knows who were in both of those cars at that time. Sarah's husband, Philip Boyd, returned home from work around midnight on April 4th, 1987. While he was initially concerned that she and Kimberly weren't home yet, he assumed they were with relatives or Linda. He notified the local authorities after waking up at 6 a.m. and finding they still had not returned. According to an article written by the Press and Standard on April 2nd, 1987, the gospel concert was held at 7:30 in the Hampton Street Auditorium. Featured was the Swanee Quintet of Augusta, Georgia, and Slim and the Supreme Angels of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The public was invited. On April 5th, 1987, the vehicle the three had been traveling was located by Linda's husband at Wells Crossroad, near the intersection of Highway 15 and 176. It had been disabled and abandoned, as the freeze plug had blown and the engine had overheated. There was no sign of the trio at the scene, and it's theorized they pulled over to assess the situation when they disappeared. On April 27, 1987, the State Law Enforcement Division, SLED, assisted the Dorchester County Sheriff's Office in a search of a half-mile radius around where the Lincoln was recovered. A plane was brought in to assist. Unfortunately, no evidence was found concerning their disappearance. However, they did find an acre or more of marijuana. The case received limited media attention due to what was found. In August 1987, an advertisement was placed in a local newspaper offering a $6,000 reward for information leading to the whereabouts of Kimberly, Sarah, and Linda. In 1990, Sarah's credit card was used at a local mall. Police stated the signature was barely legible and didn't match the missing woman's handwriting. The identity of the person who used the credit card has never been established, and it's currently unknown if they had any involvement in the trio's disappearances. The case has since gone cold, and investigators believe that foul play was involved. At the time, the Dorchester County Sheriff claimed to have a few suspects, but they never named anyone. Sheriff Knight was with state police back then and one of the original detectives on the case. His father, Carl, was the sheriff of Dorchester County and led the investigation. According to Sheriff Knight, a friend of Linda's husband, John, called him to tell him he saw their Lincoln on the side of the road. When investigators arrived, it had been moved and taken to a car shop. According to Sheriff Knight, Linda's husband John and Lieutenant William Martin with the Orange County Sheriff's Office moved the car. Dorchester County detectives eventually went through the car. However, too many people had been in it to gather useful evidence. A detective's statement reveals John McCord's whereabouts the night of his wife's disappearance. He told an officer he got home from his construction job at 7:30 p.m. and that Linda wasn't home. He left a check on some cement he had poured earlier at work. According to this statement, he then went to the local Piggly Wiggly to drink beer and arrived at Linda's mother's house at 11 p.m. This aligns with Linda's mother's statement, but the statement did not include that there was another person with him. He told deputies he went to Ridgeville to look for Linda after midnight and then came back to Harleyville. From Harleyville, he went to Holly Hill, Vance, and Santee, where he got gas. He told detectives he was out all night looking for Linda and didn't come home until 5 a.m. Saturday, April 4th. In 2020, Sheriff Leroy Ravenel received a tip the three were buried under concrete at a house in Santee, South Carolina. It just so happened to be concrete that authorities say John McCord poured himself long ago. The current owner was in the middle of a renovation but allowed investigators in. The sheriff asked a bold question: "Do you mind if I tear the whole house down?" And the guy was like, "Okay." And the sheriff was very excited. Crews spent 3 days conducting meticulous work in the early June of 2020. The concrete was removed piece by piece using radar tools to help them search deep in the dirt. They were hoping to find something, but there was nothing, the sheriff said. No bodies, no bones. If something happened to them and John was involved in it, there was more than one person involved. I do not think he could have handled 3 individuals, 3 graves, and still get home at the time he said he got home, said Sheriff Knight. Investigators never made contact with the driver traveling behind Linda's Lincoln, but the location where the car was found still had them puzzled. Linda, Sarah, and Kimberly were traveling from Waltersboro. Linda had to drop off Sarah and Kimberly near the Ridgeville area before heading home to Harleyville. How did they end up at Wells Crossroads? Linda McCord was born on August 12, 1954. Linda met John when he was working at Bilton Ford in Holly Hill after she graduated from Claflin University. The two built a house on her mom's property and got married, much to the dismay of Linda's family and friends. I never did like John. It was something about his disposition that I did not care for, said Debbie Boyd, one of Linda's cousins through marriage. There was a history of domestic violence she would tell us about. They fought and he beat her up. I think she was at her mother's house, explained Linda's first cousin, Tanya Boyd. Tanya was quickly interrupted by Debbie. No, there was a time where he beat her up and she came to my house with a black eye. The three cousins shared horrifying stories of physical abuse, but no one ever thinks she ever told the police. She was nervous and she couldn't take it any longer. Linda wasn't the only person afraid of John. Her mom was too. Linda's mom died 2 years after her disappearance and held onto one clue that was never told to investigators about what and who she saw through her front door the night the three vanished: John and his nephew. It was late that night, supposedly, that Linda disappeared. She said they both came in. They were extremely sweaty, a lot of dirt, a lot of mud on their boots, or something they had on. She was very immaculate. Her house was like you could almost lick off the floor, that kind of housekeeping. So she was concerned, but not overly because he did construction work. She went on to explain, my aunt never admitted to those cops that there was a problem in that marriage. She never told anyone. And I think that's why there was no arrest in this case. They had no proof. But a detective statement reveals John McCord's whereabouts the nights of his wife's disappearance that I already went over. However, News 4 tried to get a statement from John, and that didn't work. But now no one can because he passed away in 2018. News 4 also attempted to try to track down the supposed nephew John was with, but the cousins couldn't remember his name. Sheriff Knight said John never obtained an attorney and willingly sat down for interviews until he was asked about taking a lie detector test. Until we got to the polygraph, I thought he cooperated pretty darn good, Knight said, but he just stopped me at that point. John claimed a prior polygraph test on an unrelated accusation showed he was guilty when he claimed innocence. Was there an alleged cover-up? He was protected, I know for sure, by Orangeburg County investigator detectives. Whoever. He was untouchable, explained Sarah's niece, Tiffany. Both Sarah Boyd and Linda McCord's family share similar feelings. Every time it seemed like there was something with John, that guy, said Gwendolyn's Linda cousin. Gwendolyn went on to say, I think his name is William T. Martin. He was always there. He was always the cleanup person. Orangeburg County Sheriff Leroy Ravenel said, "I hope that's not the case, but I have no knowledge and no idea." William Martin retired from Orangeburg County in 1997, 10 years after Linda, Sarah, and Kimberly vanished. He had been sick for a few years. When News 4 attempted to reach Mr. Martin, they were unsuccessful. The sheriffs have their theories about what happened on April 3rd, 1987, and they shared it with News 4. Ravenel quickly said, "I think someone may have taken it to their grave." He went on to say, "I pray that I'll be able to call Sheriff Knight again and tell him again, meet me over there, and then we'll be able to contact these families and we'll be able to sit down and give them some closure. If something happened to them and John was involved in it, there was more than one person involved." And I agree. I don't think he could have handled the three graves, the three individuals, even though one was helpless. I don't think so. I believe that when he showed up to Linda's mom's house, his nephew was with him. I believe the nephew knows something. If you know the nephew's name, I'm willing to listen and pass that information on. I just don't see how he could take on two adults with a child running around. I just don't see it. But anything is possible when you really want to get at someone. Well, this is the case of Linda McCord, Sarah, and Kimberly Boyd. If you know anything about their disappearance or where they could possibly be, please call the Dorchester County Sheriff's Office at 843-832-0300. Thank you, and hopefully stay tuned for the next episode. Goodbye, my lovies.